NASCAR heads to Phoenix this week. Go to RotoExperts.com. Get the preview from Dan Dobish if you're playing on Yahoo or if you're playing on NASCAR Fantasy Live. And here to preview the Phoenix race for DraftKings purposes. He won 5 tournaments last year. We welcome back in Sean Engel. Sean, how are you this morning?
Hey, I'm feeling pretty all right this morning. How are you guys doing?
I'll be doing pretty all right if I have Kevin Harvick in my lineup, Sean. 7 wins in Phoenix, 5 since they repaved the surface in 2011. He's well worth the $10,800 on DraftKings, Sean. They call him the Desert Dominator. But are you thinking maybe you're steering away from him because he's so widely owned and maybe, say, building more around Jimmy Johnson, who's $10,300? What do you think of that sort of approach?
Harvick's 7 wins and 3-year average finish of 3.2 at Phoenix already puts himself as a must-start pick, especially if he's going to do well in practice. And a lot of fantasy owners will pick him, so it's actually very, very wise in order to make some lineups without Harvick, because even he is not completely safe from an accident or a mechanical failure. So a good substitute like Johnson, who is a 4-time winner with an average finish of 7.7, is crucial for success. And he's also $500 lower at $10,300 compared to Harvick's $10,800.
I was really impressed with the Penske cars last week, so I was thinking of potentially building a lineup this week. Maybe Logan and Kozlowski, since they're both under.
You mean?
Logano?
Yeah.
Yeah, Logano and Kozlowski, since they're both under 10K. Is that a good idea to provide more flexibility?
I think both of the Penske cars are great picks to build a lineup out of. They have more flexibility than Johnson and Harvick due to their lower salary, but they both have a great history at Phoenix, with Keselowski and Logano having a 6.2 and 9.3 3-year average finish position, with both of them finishing in the top 5 in this race 2 years ago. So, yeah, I definitely do like both of the Penske cars.
Could we end up like we did last week? You watched last week. It was Logano and Keselowski going 2-1 last week.
Yeah. I mean, it's entirely possible that we could see that again, but I think Harvick is going to end up ruining that party this week because Phoenix is his house.
Yeah, pretty much. But if somebody else could be on the porch of the house, if Phoenix is his house, how about Casey Kane? He's won at Phoenix before. He's off to a pretty good start this year, and at only $8,400. Maybe if you're loading up with Harvick and even Harvick and Johnson, how good of a value is Casey Kane this week, Sean?
I do really like Kane this week since this is one of his better tracks, and his DraftKings salary of $8,400 is still a nice value. He also has 8 top 10 finishes at Phoenix and is coming off a top 10 finish last week in Las Vegas. I'm looking for him to be a prime start for at least the top 10 finish.
Looking for a bargain this week. What about Ryan Newman at $7,500?
Newman is a fantastic bargain pick that will greatly balance a lineup with those 5 consecutive top 15 finishes. And 3 of those finishes were top 10 finishes. Each one of those previous finishes had him finish higher than where he started, including a third-place finish in last year's race. So I'm definitely looking for him to be another great bargain pick.
We're talking to Sean Engel. Follow him at SeanMan247. You can also check him out on dailyroto.com every week as well. Ty Dillon is at the very bottom of the salary ladder this week, $5,400, but he's in the number 14 this week. Is he more than just a punt play? Is he just really like the guy to have at the bottom of the ladder because of that price?
Absolutely. Dillon has only ran 1 race at Phoenix where he has finished 27th after starting 26, which is a lot better than a lot of drivers of this salary value can give. But on top of that, he is riding in Stewart-Haas racing equipment, which already improves his chances of finishing solidly for his value. And with a guy like him, you want him to get through the race and finish better than he started. He's riding in better equipment, so I can definitely see that happening this time around.
According to my algorithm, Carl Edwards has the 3rd highest driver rating in Phoenix.
What is your algorithm?
It's a secret.
Okay.
Is he one of the better top-tier drivers this week? He's 9,400.
Carl Edwards has an average finish of 11.1 at Phoenix, which is 3rd best only behind Johnson and Harvick. And as a former two-time Phoenix winner, I certainly think he is better than most drivers around his salary this week. But there are still a few drivers that I think are a bit more competitive, like Brad Keselowski, who's about $300 more.
Wow,
I do like
Sean's
Edwards.
slamming my
He's
algorithm.
just not
Go
my
ahead,
top
Sean.
pick for this week.
Yeah, thanks.
Matt Kenseth and Dale Earnhardt Jr. are not in the top 10 in the all-important driver rating category at Phoenix. Are they among your top drivers to avoid this week? Those two of the top drivers to avoid, and who else are you steering clear from this week?
Out of these two drivers, Kenseth is the one I would avoid this week because his asking price, especially when he's only had one top 5 finish within the past 4 Phoenix races and an average finish of 16.3, is a little too high to ask for this week. Junior, on the other hand, has seen more success as a 3-time winner with a 3-year average finish of 10.5 at Phoenix, combined with a lower salary of $9,200, which makes him a solid play compared to Kenseth this week. So that pretty much is what I have to say about that.
Well, who else? Is there anybody else that you steer clear of? Give us some more names that maybe we don't want to pop in the lineup this week. And one of them I'm thinking of maybe is Paul Menard, even though he ran well last week and he's under 7,000.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Paul Menard, but I also would avoid Greg Biffle too. He's a bit finicky this season, and also his stats at Phoenix also showcase that he doesn't always have the best of runs here too. So I would avoid him this week too.
Who do you think is going to win the race and why?
I think the race winner is going to be Kevin Harvick, of course. He's just too good here. He is known as the Desert Dominator. He's won 5 of the last 7. And if he has a really good car in practice, I especially watch out. But I do think, though, that those Penske cars will not be far behind, especially Joey Logano.
Sean, for those who are just getting into playing fantasy NASCAR, share some of your strategy tips here in terms of, like, how important is watching practices and looking the results, and which practice sessions are the most important when you start trying to set your lineup?
When setting lineups, I usually like to focus on the practice sessions because they're usually a good indicator of how a car will perform during the actual race. And practices are even better than past history because practices are usually even more recent. And within those practices, drivers usually end up using the same cars in the actual race on Sunday or Saturday. In this case, it's a Sunday. So if you do good in practice, it's a very good chance that you're going to end up having a driver that's going to do pretty good in the actual race. So it's very important to take a look at practice speeds no matter what.
Also, sometimes when it happens in practice, when a guy has a mishap, he ends up starting in the back of the pack, and on DraftKings, maybe people would veer away from him. It's a very good driver starting at the back of the pack. Do you tend to lean towards those guys? I know you spoke about them in the last few weeks. If you see a Kyle Busch or a Carl Edwards starting at the back of the pack, is that somebody you jump on because you think other people are going to avoid them in daily?
Well, it depends on the situation because a driver can crash during the practices, but a driver can also crash during qualifying. If a driver crashes during qualifying and they end up having to go to a backup car, their qualifying time could be disallowed, and then they end up starting from the back completely, which doesn't really affect their starting position in terms of points. And it only means that it's like they're starting in the last position. So they're going to become what I call a no-risk play. And with that no-risk play, all they can do is they can just gain positions and not lose any. Whereas if you reckon practice, like final practice before the race, and go to a backup car, it ends up counting your qualifying position, which means it will be harder for a driver to gain fantasy points and get that edge for your own team. So I say look at the qualifying positions very carefully before making your final picks this week, just to make sure of that.
All right, Sean Engel, follow him at SeanMan247. Sean, good luck in the race this week. And Adam had his notebook out, and he's writing down everything down you talked about strategy-wise.
Well, it's good to make sure you have all your notes ready for the race.
All right, Sean, we'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks.
All right. You going to throw a lineup in this week, Ronis?
Yeah,
I know I've been giving you lineups, but do you think you might be able to create your own?
Yeah, maybe. I think the winner for me this week is going to be Ty Dillon because Dillon is one of the greatest races of all time. Top 5, Dillon, and Dillon. So that's where I'm going.
Well, you got to have Harvick this week. It's
Yeah.
like I'm already looking like I was looking last night at constructing some of my lineups.
What's his ownership level going to be?
It's going to be through the roof. It's a number. He's going to be more than 50% owned. I mean, he just owns this place. It's like his track. It's like, when you go to Charlotte, it's just like Jimmy Johnson. That's like his track. There are certain drivers among the elite drivers who say that's their track. But there's different. That's why I like putting multiple lineups in because I'll have one with Harvick and Jimmy Johnson in it too. But then, they were talking about the Penske cars. They're both under 10,000 too. That gives you a lot more lineup flexibility.
Okay, I'll take that into consideration.
Yeah, it was very interesting last year though, and I was very cool how DraftKings kind of tweaked it as they went along. We went from 5 to 6 drivers at one point. And also, if you got any questions for NASCAR Fantasy Live or Yahoo, let me know. I like Ty Dillon a lot in Yahoo this week.
Dillon!
Ty Dillon this week, Austin's brother.